Our goal for today, Rector, even more participants than last time. I think our record so far has been 1,500 people listening in from across all the different institutes and all the different schools across the country. I wonder if we can make 2,000 today. Let's see. It's an important topic. Egra and Egma has made a real difference elsewhere where people have rolled it out. It's a great opportunity as well for us in Uzbekistan. Welcome again, everyone. We will start in 2 minutes. Do please make yourselves comfortable. While we're waiting, we have translation of the webinar today. Do please select English or Uzbek as your translation channel while we're waiting, so you can hear in the language that's most comfortable for you. We are also broadcasting on Facebook on the Avloni page, if you prefer to watch there.
Yeah, that's okay. Assalomu alaykum, xalq ta'limi tizimi rahbar, mutaxassis va pedagog xodimlari, hududiy malaka oshirish markazlarining tinglovchilari, hurmatli ustozlar, Abdulla Avloniy nomidagi Ilmiy tadqiqot institutining navbatdagi xalqaro webinariga xush kelibsiz deb qolamiz. Ushbu webinarimizning mavzusi Xalqaro Baholash Dasturlari Egma hamda Egra deb nomlanadi. Hozir ustozlar sizga demak Zoom Zoom dasturidan foydalanish haqida ozgina ko'rsatmalar berib o'tmoqchiman. Vebinarimiz o'zbek tilida ham bo'ladi. Agar vebinarimiz ingliz tilida bo'layotgan jarayonda o'zbek tilida tarjimasini eshitishni xohlasangiz, unda ekraningizning pastki qismidagi globus tugmachasidan interpretation yoki perevod tugmachasini bosing va undan o'zbek tilini tanlang. Agar siz mobil qurilmangiz orqali ushbu vebinarni kuzatib turgan bo'lsangiz, unda ekraningizning pastidagi 3 ta nuqta qismiga bosing, undan perevod demak tugmachasini tanlab, o'zbek tilida demak ushbu vebinarimizni eshitishingiz mumkin bo'ladi. Agar sizda mavzu yuzasidan savollar bo'ladigan bo'lsa, ularni marhamat chat qismida yozib qoldirishingiz mumkin. Yoki agar siz ishtirokchilarimizdan, bugungi demak mehmonlarimizdan biriga to'g'ridan to'g'ri savol yo'llamoqchi bo'lsangiz, unda demak ekraningizning pastki qismida demak ko'rinib turgan raise hand tugmachasini mana bosib, demak ovozli xabar orqali bizga to'g'ridan to'g'ri demak savol yo'llashingiz mumkin bo'ladi. Bugungi vebinarimizni ochib berish uchun hozir so'z navbatini Abdulla Avloniy nomidagi Ilmiy tadqiqot institutining direktori Ayxon aka Rajiyevga beramiz. Marhamat.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli webinar ishtirokchilari, hurmatli xalqaro ekspertlar. Avvalambor ushbu bugungi qiziqarli mavzuda webinar tashkil qilgan xalqaro hamkorimiz Delivery Associates va shu bilan bir qatorda bugungi webinarda ishtirok etib, o'z ma'ruzalari bilan ishtirok etayotgan John Tulli, Delivery Associates tashkilotchisi, yetakchisi, Shuhrat Qayumov, axborot kommunikatsiya texnologiyalarini rivojlantirish markazi direktori, Margarita Vidavati, Tanoto Foundation ta'lim dasturi rahbari va shu bilan bir qatorda Mariya Ritka Zula ta'lim va trening bo'yicha AKT bo'limi bosh menejeri va shu bilan bir qatorda RTI International xalqaro tashkiloti a'zosiga alohida minnatdorchilik bildirmoqchimiz. Darhaqiqat, hurmatli ishtirokchilar, bugungi webinarimiz o'ziga yarasha bir muhim mavzuni tanlaganmiz. Bugungi webinarda sizlar bilan ulashmoqchi bo'lgan ma'lumotlarimiz xususan xalqaro tadqiqotlarga, aniqroq qilib aytadigan bo'lsak, Egra hamda Egma xalqaro tadqiqotlariga bag'ishlangan hisoblanadi va ushbu webinarda mana shu ikkita yuqorida aytib o'tilgan dasturlar bo'yicha mutaxassislarimiz o'z fikr mulohazalarini aytib o'tishadi va siz bilan ulashishadi. Shu bilan bir qatorda ruxsatingiz bilan Egra Egma haqidagi qisqacha ma'lumotni berib o'tsam, xabaringiz bor, mamlakatimiz o'zining xalqaro arenadagi reputatsiyasi, xususan xalqaro baholash dasturlari va turli xil xalqaro global reytinglarda O'zbekiston Respublikasini o'rnini yaxshilash va shu bilan bir qatorda yildan yilga dinamikasini o'sishini ta'minlash borasida turli xil chora-tadbir ishlari amalga oshirilmoqda. Ushbu chora-tadbirlar rejasi va ularning olib borilishi, ijrosi mamlakatimiz senatorlar kengashi tomonidan, ya'ni senatning raisi tomonidan rahbarlik qilayotgan maxsus ishchi guruh tomonidan nazoratga olingan. Va mana shu xalqaro global reytingda O'zbekistonni ishtirok etishida ta'limning alohida o'rni mavjud. Xabaringiz bor, turli xil indekslarda, reytinglarda iqtisodiyot, sog'liqni saqlash bilan bir qatorda ta'lim sifati, kadrlar sifati bilan bog'liq bo'lgan turli xil indikatorlar orqali to'planadigan ma'lumot, statistik ma'lumotlar mavjud. Va bugungi webinarimizning mavzusi ham ana shu yuqoridagi hukumat tomonidan olib borilayotgan chora-tadbirlar rejasini mantiqiy davomi desak, bu ham adolatdan bo'ladi. Shu bilan bir qatorda aytib o'tmoqchi edikki, 2019-yil 18 fevral kuni ilk bor mana shu Xalq ta'limi vazirligi rahbariyati USAID tashkiloti vakillari bilan rasmiy uchrashuv bo'lib o'tgan. Mana shu tadbirda O'zbekistondagi boshlang'ich sinf o'quvchilarini o'qish va matematika fanlaridan bilim darajalarini baholash tizimini muhokama etilgan. Xususan aytishimiz mumkinki, Egra xalqaro tadqiqoti bu o'quvchilarni o'qish savodxonligini tekshirsa, matematika bo'yicha savodxonlikni tekshirishda Egma xalqaro tadqiqoti o'z vazifasini bajaradi va ushbu tadqiqotlarda statistik ma'lumotlarga ko'ra so'nggi yillarda jahonning rivojlangan va rivojlanayotgan 70dan ortiq mamlakatlari faol ishtirok etib kelishmoqda. Agarda umumiy qilib oladigan bo'lsak, Egra Egma biz bilgan oxirgi yillarda mamlakatimizda keng tarqalgan tendensiya PISA, TIMSS, PIRLS va TALIS kabi xalqaro bir qator tadqiqotlarni ichidagi alohida bir o'ringa ega bo'lgan, alohida bir bosqichga, muhim bir bosqichga xos bo'lgan tadqiqot hisoblanadi. Agarda umumiy bu tadqiqotlarning maqsad mazmunini tahlil qiladigan bo'lsak, bilamiz, maktab o'quvchilari boshlang'ich sinfdan to yuqori sinflargacha 11 yillik ta'limni o'z ichiga oladigan bo'lsa, Egra Egma bu boshlang'ich sinflarni bilim darajasini baholasa, TIMSS PIRLS undan keyingi bosqichlari va shu bilan bir qatorda yuqori sinf 9-sinf 15 yoshli bolalarning bilim darajasini PISA hamda maktabdagi o'qituvchi hamda maktab direktorlari va ota-onalar o'rtasidagi munosabat, malaka oshirish tizimidagi ishtiroki va hokazo bilan bog'liq bo'lgan ma'lumotlarni esa TALIS xalqaro tadqiqoti o'z vazifasini bajaradi. Ko'rib turganingizdek, har bir xalqaro tadqiqotni o'zini bosqichi, o'zini navbati, o'zini maxsus baholaydigan auditoriyasi, yoshi va sinfi mavjud. Va hammasini agarda jamlaydigan bo'lsangiz, butun bir o'rta ta'limni sifatiga ishonchli bir baho beradigan bir ma'lumotni olishimiz mumkin bo'ladi. Shu nuqtai nazardan yuqoridagilarni inobatga olib aytib o'tishimiz kerakki, bugungi navbatdagi vebinarimiz ham ana shu o'ta muhim mavzularni o'z ichiga olgan webinar hisoblanadi. O'ylaymizki, bugungi webinar sizga har tomonlama qiziqarli bo'ladi. Egra va Egma xalqaro tadqiqotlariga oid tegishlicha qiziqarli ma'lumotlarni bilib olasiz degan umiddamiz va shu bilan bir qatorda o'ylaymizki hamda umid qilamizki, bugungi webinar natijasida xususan matematika boshlang'ich sinfda ta'lim berayotgan boshlang'ich sinf o'qituvchilarimiz, sinf rahbarlarimiz mana shu tadqiqotdan kelib chiqqan holda amaliyotda, jarayonlarda mana shu matematika hamda o'qish savodxonligini oshirishga qaratilgan bir qator qo'shimcha chora-tadbirlarni amalga oshirasizlar degan umiddamiz. Rahmat, katta salomat bo'linglar.
Thank you, Rector, for your kind words of introduction. I'm conscious we have 3 speakers lined up to talk today, so I will just speak very briefly, and that is to add my thanks to the rectors, to all of our wonderful speakers here today. Thank you, Shukrat, for making the time. Thank you, Ritka, for all your leadership of Egra, the 2 of you across our work here in Uzbekistan. In addition, I'd like to thank the Honourable Minister for his ongoing sponsorship and USAID for making all of our work together possible here. For many of you may not have heard of the Tanoto Foundation, so I'll just explain a bit more about their important role in transforming education in Indonesia. They are one of the leading foundations there, and all of their work, and Ibu Adi, I know you can speak more about this, fundamentally works from a single belief that quality education accelerates equal opportunity. And that has a narrow goal, which is very focused on our work here in Uzbekistan, which is to elevate Indonesia's global ranking in education. Their goal is for Indonesia to be one of the 5 most improved countries in PISA by 2030. Like us, though, they also recognize the broader impact that has on society. So they aim to create strong leaders, because through creating a community of leaders, that creates a positive impact across society. So thank you, Ibu Adi, who is the head of basic education in the Tanoto Foundation. Thank you also, Ibu Anginta, her colleague who is also with us, who is the head of partnerships at the Tanoto Foundation. The rector's spoken about the importance of effective assessment. Here, we're very much thinking about how we make a broader shift from assessment of learning to assessment for learning. And that's going to be a theme of our discussion today. Before we do that, though, I would like to ask you a quick poll just to get a sense of who's listening in today, so we can tailor our remarks to that. And so, Ibu Farah, if you could set the poll. We have our usual poll we'd ask you to answer. And this is just 3 questions. The first is how many people are joining the webinar with you? We know several of you join in large groups. Are you on your own? About 10 of you. Are there possibly more than 20 of you on your link today? And then could you tell us a bit about your role in the school? Are you a school principal, school teacher, admin, or perhaps there's a range of roles that you have in your group? And then we're curious about how many of these webinars you've attended so far. So do please take a moment to answer the question. We'll give you about a minute for this before I hand on to Shukrat to kick us off with talking a bit about his role in an Egra and Egma in Uzbekistan. I can see many of you voting at the moment. We'll just give you another 30 seconds to finish the voting. Okay, could we show the results, please, Ibu Farah? Thank you. So we see that most of you here are here in large groups. So as we discuss, we'll try to set up some questions so you can continue the discussion after we finish the official webinar. We also see the majority of you are school teachers. That's really useful to know. So we'll try and include some practical tips about what this means for your teaching. And then we see that many of you have attended a previous webinar, but not that many. So in that context, all of our webinars so far are on the Avaloni Facebook page. I'd encourage you to go back. There's lots of discussion there about teaching a compressed curriculum, about how other countries have been teaching to support students during our time out of school in COVID and how they're now reacting now we are back in school. But thank you for taking the time, and thank you again for being with us here today. If I can now hand over to you, Shukrat, thank you for being here. I know it's a time out of your day. Your leadership's really vital to the success of Egra and Egma, and I'd invite you just to share a bit about the plans for the rollout here in Uzbekistan to kick off our discussion today for about the next 5 to 6 minutes or so. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me, John and their colleagues. Actually, it was really interesting for me to participate in this event. I will switch to Uzbek because most of the participants are Uzbek people, and I mean, I would like to let them learn and understand more from this. That's why, if you allow me. So, men o'zbek tilida gapiraman, ko'proq shu o'zbek uchun shunga bir sekund bizda bu tashkilot mana shunaqa bir ko'p tashkilot USAID yordamida ko'pincha USAID yordamida bu tadqiqot O'zbekiston uchun muhimligini hozir Aytxon akamiz juda ham yaxshi tushuntirib o'tdilar. Yana bitta juda muhim narsa, faqat bu tadqiqot emas, umuman ixtiyoriy tadqiqotlar, mana shu Egra Team Spirits va PISA O'zbekistonni qiziq jozidoborligini juda ham oshirishadi, ya'ni investorlarni ko'proq jalb qilishadi. Ixtiyoriy kattaroq investor O'zbekistonga pul tikishdan oldin o'zi aholi ta'limi darajasi qanaqaligini bir ko'rish kerak. Aynan shu Egma bizda boshlang'ich ta'limni, ya'ni boshlang'ich ta'lim har doim eng muhim ta'limlardan bittasi ekan. Ya'ni bitta hozircha mana dastlabki pilot test bo'ldi. Bu yilda yana katta test o'tkaziladi. Birinchi natijalardan bittasi bizda uni taqqosladigan bo'lsa, ikkinchi sinf darajasi dunyo trendi bo'ladigan bo'lsa, ikkinchi darajasi trendi bir yaqin juda ham. 4-chi sinfning trendini qaraydigan bo'lsangiz, o'sha 4-chi sinfniki biznikidan ancha qolish ko'proq. Va bu gap, ya'ni farqi qolishish. Ko'proq orqaga ortib borgan sari bizga mana shu ekspertlar, juda ham tajribali ekspertlar aytishgani bo'yicha sakkizinchi, to'qqizinchi, 10-chi yuqori sinflarni to'g'irlashga harakat qilasizlar, lekin aslida sizlar shu boshlang'ich sinfni o'zidan to'g'irlashingiz kerak va o'shanda sizlarda xalqaro darajaga bilimlarga olib chiqish osonroq bo'ladi deyishgan edi. Bu meni fikrim bo'yicha juda ham muhim gaplar bo'lgan. Va umuman olganda boshlang'ich sinfni mana shunaqa obyektiv baholash juda ham O'zbekistonda kam bo'lgan hozircha. Mana bunaqa yuqori darajada baholash biz uchun juda ham katta yordam deb o'ylayman. Said va Amerika xalqiga bu tomonda minnatdorchilik bildiramiz. So'zsiz bu tadqiqot asosan bilganlaringizdek matematikada, ya'ni mantiqan fikrlashga mo'ljallangan va ona tilda o'qish va tinglab olishga mo'ljallangan. Bu haqida bir aytib o'tsak qisqacha, mana bu yerda rasmlarda ko'rayotganlaringiz o'sha bir maktabda ochilish taqdimotida olingan rasmlar. Mana shunaqa shaklda butun O'zbekiston bo'yicha ketgan tadqiqot olib borilgan edi. 19-yilning noyabr oyida, 20-yilda katta test bo'lishi kerak edi, pandemiya tufayli bu yilga o'tkazildi. Asosiy maqsadi o'sha o'qib tinglashni tushunish va matematikadan mantiqiy fikrlashni tashxisini qo'yish va shu orqali O'zbekistonga yaxshi tavsiyalar berish deb ko'rsatilgan. Faqatgina pilot tuzda 70 ta maktabda qatnashgan, 2-4 sinf aytib o'tganday va 7 ta tilda qarindosh tillarni hammasida olib borilgan. Bilasizlar, O'zbekistonda 7 ta tilda ta'lim olib boriladi. Bunda bir fikrlardan bittasi bo'lgan, bizda o'sha borib kelgan juda ham yaxshi tajribali yigit qizlarimiz borib kelishgan. Men shaxsan o'zim juda ham katta minnatdorman shu yigit qizlarimizga. Ko'p turganingizda asosiy gaplardan bittasi o'qituvchi va o'quvchilar uchun juda ham qo'rquv va hayajon bilan qabul qilishgan. Ya'ni ingliz tilida bir high stake degan bir ibora bor. Ya'ni o'sha maktab uchun bu xuddi bir juda ham katta narsa, bir katta kelib bularni shaxsan o'zini baholayotganga o'xshab juda ham hayajon bilan qabul qilishgan. Bu naqa yondashuv qilish kerak emas. Birinchi navbatda shu hayajon va qo'rquv albatta odamlarni yaxshi natija ko'rsatishga xalaqit beradi. Shuning uchun juda ham to'g'ri qabul qilish kerak va yaxshi qabul qilish kerak. Shaxsan shu maktabga nisbatan yoki shaxsan shu direktor yoki o'quvchilarga nisbatan, o'quvchiga nisbatan hech qanday chora ko'rilmasligi haqida vazirlik rahbariyati qayta aytgan. Umumiy tumanda viloyat darajasida va respublika bo'yicha natija chiqariladi bu katta test sinovlarida. Shunda bizda o'sha qobiliyatli test o'tkazuvchilar o'sha hayajonni bosish uchun bolachani sal ochdi deymiz. Ya'ni bolacha yopilgan vaqtida unga yaxshi gapirib, yaxshi chiroyli gaplarni gapirib va qatnashganlarga bir chiroyli qalamcha, ruchka sovg'a qilgan hisobiga bolacha ancha ochilib, juda ham qiziquvchanlik bilan harakat qilishdi. Ayrim maktablarda testlarni ko'chirish hamda ko'chirib olish yoki o'rganish harakatlari bo'ldi. Bekitmayman, ayrim maktablarda o'ringa o'rin boshqa sinf o'quvchilarni qo'shishga harakat ham bo'ldi. Bu narsa kelajakka aytib qo'yish, bu narsa foydasi yo'q, chunki qaysi bir guruhda natijasi juda ham yuqori ko'rsatib qolsa, tadqiqot planshetda onlayn olib boriladi, to'g'ri o'sha serverda ko'rinib qoladi, qaysi bir viloyatda, qaysi bir tumanda, qaysi bir maktabda aniq natija juda ham baland bo'lib qoldi. Ya'ni shu yerda ehtimol kattadan bir test natijasiga aralashuv bo'lganini ko'rsatish ko'rish mumkin bo'ladi. Shuning uchun aralashish va qandaydir sun'iy natijani ko'tarish bu hech kerak emas. Yana oldin aytib o'tganimdek, test natijasi bo'yicha hech kim jazolanmaydi. Asosan bu ilmiy tadqiqot va ilmiy tadqiqot uchun olib boriladi. Natijasi ilm va fan uchun ishlatiladi va O'zbekistonni o'sha mumkin bo'lgan pastroq darajadagi ta'lim darajasini oshirish uchun mo'ljallangan bo'ladi. Shu sababli hurmatli kelajakda maktab o'quvchilarimizni tayyorlashga ko'proq harakat qilsalaringiz yaxshi bo'ladi. Bu haqida hali keyingi slaydda ko'rsatib o'taman. E'tibor bersangiz, mana shu yerda tavsiyalar bor. Bolalarni psixologik jihatdan tayyorlash uchun va qo'rquvni olib borish uchun o'sha ozgina bir tayyorgarlik ko'rish kerak, tushuntirish kerak. O'qituvchilar uchun ham va bolalar uchun ham xotirlamanglar, oddiy bir yaxshi insonlar keladi, juda ham samimiy gapirishadi deb. Aynan ta'lim sifati bo'yicha gapirilayotganda o'sha o'quvchilarda o'quv darslikdagi kichik matnlarni o'qish va savollar yordamida ularning qobiliyatini tekshirish bo'yicha o'qituvchilarga metodik yordam kerak. Ya'ni kichkina matnlarni o'qish va tushunib olish juda muhim bo'ladi. Chunki bizda muammo bo'ldi, bolachalar o'qib tinglashda tushunish sal masalaroq qiyinroq bo'ldi. Ayniqsa 4-sinflarda bu narsa bilindi, 2-sinfda ham bu narsa bilindi. O'qishga harakat qiladi, shoshiladi. Ayniqsa bilasizlar, bir 5 baho olishga harakat qilib, uyaladiganlar tez o'qib qo'yadi, lekin ma'nosini tushunmasdan o'qib qo'yadi. Bizga juda muhimi aynan o'qishi tezligi emas, aynan tushunishi. Planshetda shu maxsus dastur bor, qachon o'qishni boshladi, qachon o'qishni tugatdi-yu, keyin ma'nosini tushuntirib berayotganda qaysi so'zlar gapirib berdi yoki qaysi so'zlarni qoldirdi deganda aniq bilinadi, qaysi biri bolacha haqiqatan tushunib harakat qildimi yoki oxirigacha tushunmasdan harakat qildimi. Ikkinchi sinflar uchun mantiqiy fikrlash, mental deydi, lekin o'sha mental arifmetikaga ketib qolmasin. Aynan shu mantiqiy fikrlash, ya'ni miyasida qo'shib ayirishni hisoblash bu juda muhim masala bo'ladi. Bolachalarimiz shunga e'tibor berish kerak bo'ladi. Mantiqiy fikrlash, ya'ni hisob-kitobda aqlni ko'proq ishlatish bu muhim. Qog'ozda emas. Tenglamalar misollarni yechishda bizda sal muammolar bo'lgan. Bolachalarimiz shunga sal e'tibor ko'proq qaratish kerak ekan. Tenglamani yechishda sal qiynalishayotgan ekan. Ya'ni bu abstrakt fikrlashga to'g'ri keladi. O'zi noma'lum o'zgaruvchi nima u degan narsani ko'proq tushuntirib va bolachalarga ko'proq gapirilsa, shunda e'tibor katta bo'ladi. Va
Thank you, Shukrat. Could I ask you to wrap up your remarks in just a minute?
E'tibori kamroqligi, test topshirishda tajribasi kamroqligi shundan bilindi. Bolachalar sal shoshib qolyapti, o'zini time management deydi, vaqtni boshqaruv qobiliyati sal kamroq. Birinchi men buni qilaman, ikkinchi buni qilaman, taxminan shuncha vaqt ketadi deb shu bolachalarimizga sal mustaqil ish va mustaqil ta'lim ko'nikmalarini ko'proq e'tibor berish kerak ekan degan fikrimiz bo'ldi. Bu umumiy tavsiyalar, albattaki.
If I may, Shukrat, could you begin to wrap up your remarks to allow space for our colleagues to speak as well?
Tushuntiramiz, lekin bu vaqt salligini inobatga olib, bunga ko'p vaqt bo'lmadi. Lekin asosiy gap shu, ta'lim sifatini baholash juda muhim test va bunga albatta juda yaxshilab yondashib, bor bilimni ko'rsatish kerak. Bundan qo'rqish kerak emas. Bu O'zbekistonga katta yordam, xalqaro o'sha tadqiqotchilar tomonidan, Amerika elchixonasi, Amerika xalqi tomonidan, USAID tomonidan juda ham katta yordam. Shuning uchun bunga to'g'ri yondashish fikri bor. Rahmat taklif qilingan uchun va savollar bor bo'lsa aytasizlar. I try to finish here, John. Please go ahead.
Thank you for your comments, giving the scene in Uzbekistan. In the interest of time, there are several points I want to pick up on in the questions, and I would encourage our colleagues to keep asking questions. So where you can help guide, Shukrat, if you could start answering around the sequencing of tests and some of how parents can support their children in preparing, that would be very kind. But Ibu Ali, could I hand over to you straight away to share some of the experience from Indonesia and how you've been using the Egra and Egma results in the way we can in Uzbekistan in future to keep improving how our children learn and how our teachers support them. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor for Tanoto Foundations to be invited in this conference. We are more than happy to share our experience in using Egra and Egma as our tools to measure the impact in our program. But before talking more about Egra and Egma, please allow me to introduce a bit about Tanoto Foundations, who we are. So Tanoto Foundations, can you go to the next slide? Tanoto Foundation is a philanthropy organization founded by Indonesian businessmen, Mr. Sukanto Tanoto and Ibu Dina Bingi Tanoto, who believe that quality education accelerates equal opportunity. This belief comes from their own experience in developing the business. Both of them did not finish their formal educations. Mr. Sukanto even did not finish his high school. But he can develop the business so well. So in Tanoto Foundations, we harness the transformative power of educations to realize people's full potentials and to improve lives. Our program support human capital development at every stage of people's lives. Develop full cycle of learners from early childhood stage, basic educations, to the leadership development. At this stage, we work in 3 countries, Indonesia, China, and Singapore. In these sessions, our sharing is on using Egra and Egma in basic educations, Pintar program in Indonesia, where we work closely with the government. So as you see in this slide, Pintar program stands for promoting improvement to innovate, teach, and reach. It is aimed to improve the quality of primary and junior secondary educations in Indonesia in a sustainable manner. How we work? We work in 3 pillars, actually. I mean, the interventions that we do is divided into 3 components. First, teachers and principals professional development. We train them to implement good practices in teaching, leadership, and also school management. Second pillar is teachers training college development. So we work with the universities, teachers training college to improve quality of teachers' educations to be more practice oriented. And the third pillar, we work with the government to build their capacity to improve or to sustain the improvement quality of the schools and then scale it up, because in Indonesia we have millions of teachers, millions of principals and schools, of course, because we are the 4th biggest populations in the world. Yeah. So then can we go to the next slide? So Tanoto Foundations is an evidence-based organization. We design our interventions based on the data. We believe that we cannot improve what we cannot measure. So we exercise a measurement at various points, at the beginning, middle, and at the end of the program using various tools. Then the question is, what is the assessment tools that we use? The expected impact from the implementations of Pintar program is improved student achievement in reading, mathematics, and science. So our indicator of success is in the positive change in a student's learning outcome in these areas. So Egra and Egma is used to assess the early grade students. Egra measures emerging reading skills of students of 1st to 3rd grade of primary level, such as, recognize word and letter, in oral reading fluency, or even reading comprehensions. Then Egma measures the foundational numerical skills of the students at the lower grade, such as number identifications, addition and subtractions, or word problems, for instance. So another questions again, why we use Egra and Egma? Egra and Egma assessments are international standardized tools developed by RTI, my colleague here, Maria, and has been applied in more than 60 countries, including Indonesia. Accordingly, this allows us to benchmark our children's performance globally. These tools has been adjusted to Indonesia context. It is translated already in our national language, Bahasa Indonesia, Indonesia language, and has been used across the nations, which allow us to check the performance of our students nationally. So that's actually the 2 main reasons why we are using Egra. Now, let me share how Egra and Egma results help us to design an appropriate improvement program in our Pintar program in specific. Yeah. So I will start with the process of the data collections. The picture here, you can show, I mean, everyone can show that shows the process of the data collections. The assessor engages the students personally. During the test, students are asked to identify letter, words, and then to read the story passage, and then the assessors notes whether they pass the test or not. In the box, there's actually a sample of passages that we use, and also a graph on the result of reading comprehension test. We can see together here that in the graph, when the answer of questions is explicitly written in the passage, majority of the students, more than 80%, gave correct answer. For example, the second graph, I mean, the question is, let me see, what will mother make? 86 students gave correct answer, because in the passage it's clear that in the first line of the passage, mother makes fried fritters. Another examples, the third questions, where does Intan go? 94% students gave the correct answer. And the answer is in the passage and the line and the row number 3. Sorry, in the row number 2, yeah. Sorry, I mixed up with this language. So Intan runs to the market. So it is clear, the passage is clearly mentioning the answer of the questions. However, when the answer of question is not written in the passage, but needs a process of connections, logical thinking, even drawing a conclusions, fewer students can provide correct answers. On the first graph, the questions why Intan does not go to the schools, only 63% of the students gave correct answer. It drove actually from the conclusions on the first sentence on the passage that today is a school holiday. So these findings gives us an information that many students may need help in making inference and advanced analysis. Accordingly, we focus our interventions to help the teachers to improve their skills in raising higher order thinking skills when facilitates students' learning. So that's a sample on how we use Egra. Next slide. At the macro level, Egra also provides us a snapshot of the students' situations across the locations that we work. The Pintar program, our program, works in 5 states: North Sumatra, Riau, East Kalimantan, Central Java, and Jambi. The result of is presented here, that all states, the 5 states that we work, show strong performance above the national level collected in 2014. On the first bar is actually the national level result. Yeah. Overall, our 2018 baseline study reported that 60.8% students can read fluently with comprehensions. This is a good encouragement. Another student performance test like PISA, however, reported that Indonesia are behind other countries. PISA, as mentioned by Sukrat, is a student assessment initiated by OECD. It measures the performance of 15-year-old students also in reading, math, and science. The PISA reported that only for Indonesia, reported that only 30% of 15 years students in Indonesia meets minimum score of reading. So we predict that although our students start strong with reading at the early grade, the performance fell with times. Could it be the problem with the lack of reading habit? So in Pintar, we address it. We focus in building reading culture among the student on the top of reading ability. So that's how we use the overall result of the Egra. Yeah? So in the next slide, this is my last slide. Don't worry, John. I will try to speed up. So Egma, on the other hand, it measures basic numeracy skills. The data collections process is pretty much the same like in Egra. See the pictures also, face-to-face meeting between the assessor and the students. The graph presents that Egma use variety of questions asked during the test. It starts with word problem, value comparisons, subtractions or additions from the simplest one to the advanced ones, etc., etc. So there's a lot of tools inside of the Egma. Among the series of test results, the ability to answer a word problem is the lowest. You see in the first graph, I don't know why it's missing. Yeah, the statement. The statement there is it should be a word problem result test. Yeah, that result that only 39% of the students can give a correct answer in this is the lowest compared to the others questions. Yeah. Then referring to the data, we focus our training to build teacher skills in asking open questions, because it indicates that the students face a challenge in solving a complex conceptual task. So these are, I think, some examples how measurement can be used to inform our approach in improving the student learning outcomes. This can be adapted pretty much in any context, in different countries, by different educator actors, in policy making, or even in the classroom level. I think I end my presentations here and better engage with the question and answer. John, over to you.
Thank you, Ibu Ari. And one piece I'm taking from your presentation is the power of the data, not just to see where students are struggling and succeeding overall, but the variation between different parts of the country. And behind that, I know there'll be then school level data as well that can then help individual teachers in focusing their support. In the interest of time, I'll pick that up in the panel discussion, but Ridka, could I come to you to share a bit from your international experience and how you're supporting Shukrat and our colleagues to roll out Egra Egma and to achieve the same results that Tanoto Foundation is achieving in Indonesia already?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Zula with RTI, and I'd be more than happy to talk about the fantastic collaboration that USAID with the Ministry of Public Education has had with RTI and our plans for doing a national Egra Egma assessment in Uzbekistan this spring. Next slide, please. So just a few kind of high-level points about really the purpose of Egra Egma within the context of Uzbekistan. And truly the partnership was really came together to be able to provide the ministry with actionable data on student performance. So the ministry is really interested in understanding how well are students performing in these core reading competencies. And as my colleague just so well demonstrated how it's working for the Tanoto Foundation, it's really focused on those foundational reading skills and those foundational mathematics skills. So Egra is a survey assessment similar to PISA and to PEARLS, but it's really focused on those early grades. So while some of those other assessments are focused on grade 4 and grade 8 and 15-year-olds, Egra is really looking at what are children doing in grade 2, and in this instance, in grade 4 in Uzbekistan, as they're preparing for some of those larger scale assessments. And really the Egra was selected in Uzbekistan because it is a simple and efficient assessment, and it's going to get at those early grade skills. And really it's going to provide the ministry with this, we say, system diagnostic information. So it's really information that's going to help inform the ministry to guide content, to guide instructional practices in classrooms, and to provide key educator support where there's gaps that can be found. So we're hoping, that's really the information that will be provided to the ministry and useful to the ministry so that the ministry can then intervene and improve instructional practices in schools. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it's really an overview of the way ahead for the Egra. It's going to be a very large scale assessment in Uzbekistan. So we're looking at assessing 11,000 grade 2 and 11,000 grade 4 students across the country. And really the sample is very robust. So with this information, the results will be statistically representative at the national level, but as well as you mentioned, John, at the regional level. And students will be assessed in one of 7 languages. So we're really going to have information, not only at the national level of average student performance in these core skill areas, but also within the regions. And not only within the regions, but within certain language groups. So we hope that information will be very informative to the ministry and to other stakeholders within the education sector. And I'm just going to speak very briefly to the table that you see, but those are the core skill areas that the Egra is going to assess for grade 2 and grade 4 in reading and in mathematics. And it's very important to note that students will be assessed in their first language, but they will also be assessed in how well they understand Uzbek. And for grade 4, there's also a short English component that they will be assessed on in English language learning. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, I'd like to outline the partnership that RTI has had with the Ministry of Public Education and specifically with CICT. This partnership began in 2019. And it's really important to point out that these instruments were designed in Uzbekistan. So they are fully developed by the ministry, and all of the core skills that the Egra and the Egma assess are aligned to the grade level core competencies for grade 2 and grade 4. And those instruments were also piloted in Uzbekistan, and those instruments were modified and adapted to make sure that they were testing exactly what we needed them to test. And I also think it's important to point out, for example, that the Egra was originally for grades 1 through 3. So specifically for Uzbekistan, we developed a grade 4 specific assessment for grade 4 reading and grade 4 math in this context. And another adaptation we made, for example, was the addition of a silent reading passage. So that's something that's not a core Egra subtask, but was one that was added specifically for Uzbekistan. So not only are we assessing how well children can read out loud and comprehend what they're reading, but also if they're given just a silent reading passage, they can read quietly to themselves and answer comprehension questions. That was an important addition to this assessment. And as Shukrat mentioned, this was originally intended to happen last year, the end of grade 2 and grade 4 in 2020. With the outbreak of COVID-19, that really changed all of our plans. The pandemic had just hit the world, and everyone was just struggling to see how that was going to affect schooling and teaching, and of course, this large assessment. So we plan to do it this spring, but we're going to have to make significant modifications. So we plan to do training virtually with our colleagues in Uzbekistan, and of course taking very health and safety precautions into consideration for the data collectors as well as the students and the educators in schools. So we're thinking through, certain cleaning procedures and making sure that social distancing is followed in schools. And lastly, we'll work really closely with the CICT when it comes to school closures. So it's really important for us to be really flexible and adaptable when we do this data collection. So we're prepared to make any last minute changes to school closures. So I think that was my quick overview. I'm happy to address any further questions in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for that overview. I see we have several questions coming through the chat. Could I start with a very practical question to you, Maria, around the timing? So various questions have come through around the connection between Egra, Egma, and Pearls, which came up we discussed Pearls in a webinar about 2 months ago, and we'll share that link on the Facebook page later to those of you who want to review that webinar. Ritka, can you tell us a bit about the likely timing and the connection between the two tests which will be happening in Uzbekistan this year?
Not sure if I can speak to the connection. That might be better addressed by Shukrat. But I know that we plan to collect data in April into May. So we understand that the school ends the 25th of May. We're going to be careful. I understand that there's no school exams we should be aware of, but also need to, if there's any school holidays, but we try to collect data as late as possible into the school year.
Thank you, Ritka. Shukrat, is there any other information you can share to support our teachers in their preparations around the sequencing of the exams?
Yeah, so we planning right now. It's of course depend on ministry to approve, but we plan to start it late March and maybe not finish not later than 10th of May, because after 15th of May all the schools will be really very busy with the preparation for the final exam and finishing of the study year. So as sooner as possible is better. But yeah, I think with the experience we have so far, we will be able to manage in short and fast time. But I think it will be very efficient. I don't think it's much problem.
Thank you, Shukrat. Ibu Ari, if I could now come to you, we've had some questions in the chat, so people really appreciated your discussion of the data, and then Pintar as a program. Could you tell us a bit more about how you've supported your teachers then to use the data, a bit of the sort of the nitty gritty of the professional development around that, and what's that's looked like for the teachers?
Yeah, basically, Egma is not designed as a formative test. Yeah, it is a summative test. It's a diagnostic test, like mentioned by Mr. Shukrat. Yeah, so that the use of it in the classroom can be prohibited. But the teacher, however, can still design a simplified Egra and Egma tests to check the basic reading and numeracy skills of the students using the same principles. So these tools can be easily downloaded from the internet, and then the teachers can do it. So basically, we are quite open to the teachers also on how the process of data collection is happen. So it is helping the teachers also to, to know, there's a transfer knowledge when we are doing this process. And when we do this baseline study, actually we empower the teachers. Some of the enumerators are the good teachers within that area where we are working. So the process of transfer knowledge and the capacity building is also there.
Thank you, Ibu Ari, and that sort of train the trainer approach and so the local champion approach, I see it has been one I've seen to be very, very effective elsewhere. So I'm encouraged to hear that's an approach that's been so effective for you in Indonesia. I want to coming back to you, Shukrat. Some reflections. So from the experience of Indonesia and the example that Ibu Ari shared, any reflections based on that onto how we could incorporate some of those learnings into our work over the months ahead in Uzbekistan and what that means for us?
Yeah, so I see that much more very careful preparation and a lot of instruction for test takers are important. Also, we will be concentrating a lot on warning or instructions the school side as well. So teachers and school principals should be ready, and the condition should be really good for test takers. And because it's again that it's not that careful, that not it is not that high stake, and the people should not be that much worried that no one judge them personally, but it is general, just for general improvement of the education. This is very important to understand for them. And actually, the Indonesian experience, it's very important for me. Ms. Windawati, I really would appreciate if we'll be able to share, to get more of your experience, because one of the goals set by the minister to establish such a Egra Egma unit in Uzbekistan and make it continuously on every year maybe, and provide the Avlani with a good results, so that Avlani can make a very good conclusion based on this, and make a systematic approach. Because right now we also have to make maybe the self-preparation test or self-judging test maybe, or maybe there's some recommendation for the parents who would like to let their children understand it better or learn better or study or solve mathematical equation better, easier. So because everybody understands that the importance of education now in Uzbekistan or in general in the world actually. But as I heard from the minister Sharmato himself, he said that it's very hardly to underestimate the importance of basic education of Egra Egma actually in general. So it's very important for me to participate in this seminar, and would be very nice and important for me to, and for us to get more experience from Indonesia on this case. Yeah. And actually, we also requested USAID and RCI to help us to establish this Egra Egma unit in Uzbekistan and raise the Uzbek potential Uzbek people who will prepare the test, and then how to rework the data downloaded in the server. This is also very important for us. In Uzbekistan, it's there are around 500 people who are making monitoring of quality of education by the public education ministry, and we would like to give them a real tool so they can use and judge and get a real data and reward them in real time and give to Avlani, so Avlani can make a more deeply conclusion and suggestion for all the participants of education process. Thanks.
Sure, I think John, I think the quick answer can be happen, we are happy to share anything, because every evaluations that we did is actually posted in our website, the tanotofoundations.org. So at any time you can download what we have done. And I think this is also not the first and last meeting. We can continue our correspondence through emails or even another Zoom if necessary. So would be happy to support Uzbekistan. Yeah.
Thank you for the willingness, and again for your presence here today, Ibu Adi. It has made a real difference. So you can see the thousands of people we have listening in as we have this discussion. I mean, so if I can pick up the importance of Indonesia as an example and come to you perhaps, Maria, from your global experience, you emphasized how Egra Egma is unique in being so tailored to Uzbekistan. You had the 7 national languages, extending this to grade 4 exactly for the Uzbek context. When you think what across the world, what's the other best example you would call out to us of where you've seen another country use Egra and Egma results particularly well to support teachers in teaching better in the way that Ibu Adi and Tanoto are in Indonesia? Could you tell us a bit about that case?
Yeah, we've actually done an interesting research study where we've looked across even just 10 countries that have used Egra and Egma, and how they've influenced their educational practices, their policies, based on the results from the Egra Egma. So we actually have kind of this meta-analysis about how these results can be used. And I would say primarily, three streams we've seen. It really informs curriculum development. So if there's any reforms to the curriculum system, the Egra results really kind of feed into that and really make that highlight the importance of that. Also the development of textbooks and supplementary materials. So in many countries, the results from the Egra and the Egma have really fueled making sure that children have enough reading books and reading materials in schools to actually be able to practice many of these skills at these core competencies. So that's been a second thing that we've seen, is that there's just been proliferation of reading materials and focus on new textbooks that might have like a more tailored approach to the building those early reading skills and early mathematical skills. And then also, as Ari Widawati mentioned, is the influence on in-service and pre-service teacher education. So if there are certain gaps, instructional gaps, that really kind of filters down and feeds into pre-service education for teachers, in-service teacher training, mentorship programs for teachers. And even I would say also community and home support. So what can the community do? What can parents do to further support this importance of reading? And so we've seen a lot of focus on libraries and just making sure children have access to books, and making sure that the parents are also saying the same message, and the community is also supporting children to read. So those are some concrete examples where the results of the Egma have filtered into policy and into some of these educational systems for teachers, and then for the larger community.
Thank you, Maria. And that's a nice point at which to close our webinar. So I want to pick on what you just said for one final question to all of you. So you spoke about the importance of the community and of teachers. So for each of us, if there's one message we want our listeners to take from today, which changes what they do in their schools or in their teaching institutes when they're first thing tomorrow, what is that? If I could come to you first, Maria, then to you, Ibu Adi, then finally to you, Xalqaro, before I reflect and close the discussion. Maria, to you first.
Yeah, I would say the key takeaway with the Egra is just really focusing on teaching children how to read so that they can read to learn. So I think that that's one of the focus of these core foundational reading skills that we know are predictive of future reading success. The being able to identify letters and to decode. So just giving those skills to children so that they can, just teaching them to learn how to read so that they can read to learn. I would say that.
Thank you, Maria. Ibu Adi.
Okay, so I would like to relate with the role of Tanoto Foundation as a catalyst actually for the improvement at the school level. In this case, to improve the capacity of teachers and principals. So Egra actually really help us to enable them doing reflections, a reflection on what they are already doing it, and then also the important thing is that this can be done only one time. We can help the teachers if there is a series of assessment. We have a baseline, we have midline and endline, and don't forget to tell the teachers on what is the result, so they can immediately incorporate the gap, or even boosting the one that is already good, to be better. So I think this is the Egra Egma tools to me in Tanoto Foundation experience is really helpful for us, not only to measure the effectiveness of our program, to see the impact, but also to help the teachers to know what to do when they are facilitating the learning in the schools. So I think that's all.
Thank you, Ibu Adi. You spoke about the Tanoto as a catalyst. The effective assessment like Egma is itself also a catalyst, I would say, to help us improve our teaching and student learning. But Xalqaro, to you for our final reflection.
Yeah, thanks. With Minister Shermatov, we spoke a lot about the role of assessment as a judging way, how we are going far away, how good we are going actually. our textbooks are good, our standards are good, or educational programs are good. This is or teacher training is good. This is one of the really important way of assessment as a washback effect of the any assessment, and really change the scope of education or landscape of education. Important for Uzbekistan that before there was very few or even no good assessment done in Uzbekistan, which is really judging the knowledge children knowledge or the skills actually. The mechanical memorizing of facts or some data always undertaken by testing institutions in Uzbekistan, but not such as skills and the ability of children to learn and acquire information. That is why Egra Egma is so important actually. Government understands this fully, and President of Uzbekistan also supports this idea very much, and he actually announced several important documents that will change educational landscape very soon. And I'm really happy that USAID and World Bank and many other organizations are really eager to support this as a way of improvement of education in Uzbekistan in general, and way how to shut down the proper poverty level, how to increase the people understanding of the current situation, and really change the way how the responsible the teacher and schools for education. It is really important. So also the Egra Egma affected already the pedagogical institutions. So they also start to think about how to teach better future teachers on basic education. But I believe soon PISA and TEAMS and all of these assessments which will come very soon, they will definitely shake up the whole education and make a very big effect on the whole education. So all of these assessments are really very important, and I'm really happy and thanks to all organizers, John and everybody, so for organizing this seminar. I believe it will be very useful for our teachers, and we are ready to meet and talk more and more actually. It is important.
Thank you, Shukrat, and thank you again to all of our speakers for making the time today. Now, as Shukrat mentioned, this is just the start of a longer conversation. For our webinars, we'll be taking a break next week, but we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks' time to talk about the rollout of the new student standards, which will be, again, supporting our teachers and how we teach to support our students better. Then in 3 weeks' time, on the 17th of March, we'll be continuing our discussion of Egra Egma. We'll be answering more of the questions that you've been putting in the chat. I apologize we haven't come to all of them, but we'll make a point to pick them up then. We'll also speak a bit more about timelines and some of the practical tools that CICT and so many are developing to support the rollout of Egra Egma in Uzbekistan. For now, though, in closing, just 3 key points that I'm taking from the discussion today. The first on Egra Egma, as Shukrat, Ibu Ari and Maria have all emphasized, these are tests that are tailored for Uzbekistan, for the local context. So for Uzbekistan, that means that they're happening in the 7 national languages. They're happening in the early years up to grade 4, and they're there to help us understand how our students are performing to improve our teaching. The second point that Ibu Ari really emphasized, the exams are practical. They give us really useful data that tell us how our students are performing on a national level, but yes, also on a regional level, and they'll help us understand where our students are performing better and where not, and really understand why, so we can tailor our support to those individual schools. And then third, and most importantly, where Shukrat finished, fundamentally it is around teaching, not around the assessment. Yes, the assessment gives us better data, but it helps us learn because it helps us change the way we teach to support our students better. And you as teachers continue to be the most important people in the system in helping our students day in, day out. And everything we do is about helping you teach more effectively for our students' future and for a brighter and happier Uzbekistan for all of us. So the rector, unfortunately, had to step away at the hour. So he has asked me to thank you again for your time, for your ongoing involvement in the webinars. This is a real community we're developing. We hope that we've given you food for thought as you continue discussions in your own schools and in your own classrooms. Stay well, stay safe. We look forward to meeting again in 2 weeks' time to talk about student standards. Thank you for your time today. Stay safe and wear a mask.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Stay safe
Bye-bye.
and stay healthy. Bye. Thank you, John. Bye.
Thank you.